So everything that I said and got demonetized has come to pass. And I did say that you should stock up on essentials like masks, hand sanitizers, soap, toilet paper. And the reason you should do this is that even if it doesn't happen in your town, it will still have the potential of creating a panic, and then you'll find shortages. You'll not be able to find these things. And this is in my town. The cans have been raided. There are no more masks. Like, honestly, this is the best time and opportunity to open a business that creates masks.
Oh, crikey. Russian scum here. I'm in a bit of a
Russian
pickle.
scum!
So I have very limited time, but I have a subject matter that I want to discuss in depth. So I suppose this subject matter is going to take course within the next day or maybe even two. So I consider myself to be a follower of alternative media. I subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels like Sticks and Hammers 666, Sargon of Akkad, otherwise known as Carl Benjamin, and a Romanian vlogger by the name of V, which I suppose is his name or some kind of a nickname. Now, today's video is going to be about V, who is commenting on the coronavirus. I believe he is actually trained as a physician, though he did not practice for very long, if I understood it correctly. But he doesn't necessarily make his insights as a physician. He just looks at the world through the lens of criticizing a lot of the way that the mainstream media operates and that certain, social justice warrior type of mindsets operate. He's more or less a social commentator and just a news commentator as well. But he came at this from being in Romania, where he said he'd been warning people, you need to go ahead and stock up, and people in Romania go back and forth, from what I just heard from him, between Romania and Italy all the time. Well, there's people that remain in Italy that are like, hey, there's some coronavirus outbreak here, and then they came over to Romania, some of the other people, and they lied about it. So he's like, the assholes lied about it. They said they came from Germany when they came from, from Italy, where the infection happened. So yeah, this thing seems to be spreading, and he showed a picture of a Romanian store where people were in fact buying the face masks and the supplies and things. And to support, what he said before I begin to criticize it, I'm going to read an article from uns.com by a Russian fellow called Anatoly Karlin, and his blog there is actually called the Russian Reaction Blog. And his article is called "Corona Will Kill Millions and Crater the World Economy." Obviously, he's being hyperbolic, but he's being not that hyperbolic in his opinion, it seems. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. Hyperbolic much? At this point, the burden of proof surely now has to be on the optimists who've been alternately bargaining us with "it's just like the flu" and or "it's not going to kill non-East Asians anyway." So let's explain about the flu-like nature of the coronavirus. The flu is incredibly virulent, and it, I believe, mutates quickly, which is why we continuously get the flu, which is why there's no such thing as immunity to the flu, which is why it's troubling that this virus actually has the same properties as the flu. Now let's talk about it's not going to kill non-East Asians anyway. It does seem to be that, like SARS, it predominantly affects people of that genetic type. Does that necessarily mean it's going to stay that way? Because the Spanish flu certainly had those characteristics, but it didn't, necessarily keep it from affecting other people. So far, I believe that the United States death or illness that came from it was of a United States citizen that was of Chinese descent. But again, this may change. And another thing about this virus is that it's very sneaky. Its symptoms are so similar to the flu that it's hard to detect differences without intensive testing, which that costs money, and not everybody is prepared to do that. So let's read about that in depth, that aspect of its sneakiness. To which one might rejoin to the kind of this notion, the rejoinder to this notion. It beggars belief that there aren't similar or bigger clusters all over Europe, North America, and much of the world, even outside East Asia. To which one might rejoinder, why haven't they been detected yet? Well, recall how COVID-19 works. Most cases are asymptomatic. In cases where symptoms do appear, which can happen as much as 2 weeks after infection, they are easily confounded with the flu. From the earlier days, it has been estimated and repeatedly confirmed that COVID-19 has a 10% detection rate. By the way, David Pfeiffer estimates it at 18%. Meanwhile, carriers need not be asymptomatic to transmit. At such early stages, you are only going to identify these clusters by intensive testing, which, as I understand, nobody apart from Italy and South Korea is really doing yet. One might take a comparison to a tsunami, undetectable when it's out in the deep ocean, unless you're specifically looking for it, until it comes to shore and crashes down on the local healthcare systems. And that's what V was talking about, doctors being overwhelmed. He has experience in that field in Romania and working in these hospitals that are understaffed due to, people from Romania that were trained by Romania at Romanian expense, having to go overseas, not having to go, but going overseas for work that's more lucrative. So yeah, that kind of supports what he said about, hey, this is what I've been shouting about, this is what I've been screaming about, that this is pernicious, and the media seems to be downplaying it. Now, in my opinion, I'm subscribed to the New York Times, and my inbox is a lot of coronavirus stories, and I kept on basically hearing a lot of this news from various angles and being very critical of China and China's response. For instance, the kind of lefty types, because of the Uyghur situation, they got any opportunity to take a jab at China, which is not necessarily undeserved. And again, the right-wing types, because of the sort of economic structure that it has, which again is not an unwarranted critique. But to say that the media has been, playing nice with China for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be entirely accurate, which is one of the points that V made that I wanted to criticize. Furthermore, he said he took the opportunity to take a jab at the mainstream media journalists and like the Twitterati, which is the people that comment on news via Twitter without doing any actual research. Well, as he was saying that, on the screen in his video, he had a bunch of news articles listed, and under one of the news articles there was a doctor that had said that this is like the flu, etc., etc. And I follow Ron Paul, who is a person in the United States politics who ran for president a couple of times, a sort of libertarian fellow who is a physician. And he compared this to the flu, and he also seemed to hold the notion that this is being sort of sensationalized for political purposes. So, yeah. And this is a critique I wanted to make of the alt media. They do have their own kind of bias that can tend to lead to a priori assumptions, if I'm using the term correctly. I think I am, wherein they want to attack these kind of subjects. Like, hey, the big media has a bias, and China is bad, XYZ, and then there's all this social justice rhetoric that gets in the way of solving real problems. And of course, there's always going to be these elements in any unfolding event, but to immediately view things through that lens without, sort of at first getting to grips with the fact that it is being fairly well controlled in China, although obviously there's no way to control it, and that so far it is like the flu. It's not more dangerous than the flu in that it seems to affect only the elderly and those that already have greater risk for morbidity due to illness. And that's a BBC article that I'm going to link to below will describe that from the recent largest study that came out of China. Now, you might find that suspect, but while you might find that suspect because of the source of the Chinese doing the actual study, you need to present me with a different article that says that there have been healthy adults dying from this, because I haven't been able to find it. All the articles kind of seem to confirm that so far it's the very, very old and those prone to sickness that are dying from it. And again, there is the whole aspect of, well, it seems to primarily be affecting East Asians. So, yeah. And I want to do a slightly more in-depth critique of of alt media and the direction that they seem to be going, that seems to be veering a little bit off course. But this is kind of a first installment where I am describing a situation in which it has happened, which is also a big news situation. So I have to be super brief today because it's just been totally crazy. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this channel, please subscribe to it on YouTube and give it a thumbs up. Comment whatever you feel like commenting. My main website is called fractaljournal.com, where you'll find stories, ideas, and more. The show, again, if I didn't mention it at the beginning, is TFS, the Fractal Standard, which is a daily variety show that's an offshoot off of my main website, fractaljournal.com. Take care, everybody.